Hi there, I'm Marwan. When I was 14, my parents laughed in my face and kicked me out onto the street. Said I'd come crawling back, begging. But what hurt more than the night they threw me out was how they kept coming back to finish what they started. They spread lies about me, ruined every chance I had, and when I finally built a billion-dollar company without them, they tried to tear it all down, again. Ever wonder how far a family can go, just to watch you fail? I'm 32 now, sitting at the top of a billion-dollar tech construction company based in San Francisco, the kind of life people envy. But none of them know the night that rewrote everything. The night I lost everything at 14. Growing up in Tucson, Arizona, I wasn't the daughter my parents dreamed of. Osric, my father, was a man who believed authority wasn't given, it was seized. My mother, Selena, was his echo. They had one obsession: image. Their reputation in the neighborhood mattered more than anything, more than me. They had plans for me: honor student, Ivy League, perfect daughter who smiled in photos and stayed quiet at dinner. But I wasn't that girl. I questioned them. I wanted something different. And in their eyes, that made me defective. I didn't know that one night in 2010 would be the night everything snapped. It was a Saturday. The house smelled like roast beef and stale wine. They'd invited half the neighborhood, relatives, friends, anyone they could show off to. I was at the far end of the dinner table, mostly silent, chewing the inside of my cheek while they laughed too loud, talked too much. Then came the moment. My father raised his glass and said, "Our daughter has something to share, don't you, Marwan?" I knew what he expected, some rehearsed gratitude speech. Instead, I looked up and said quietly, "I'm not going to be the daughter you want. I don't want to go to Stanford. I don't want to live your life." The room went silent. You could hear a fork drop. My mother's smile cracked like cheap porcelain. Osric's jaw tightened. He leaned forward. "Excuse me?" "I don't want to be part of this performance," I said, louder now. "I want my own life." Selena's voice cut like a blade, sweet and sharp. "Look at you, ungrateful. You'll be back here in a month, begging us to let you in." Her words made the air heavier, but it was my father's reaction that shattered me. He stood up, looked around at the relatives, then laughed. A cold, calculated laugh. "She thinks she's too good for her family. Let her go. She'll learn soon enough." They didn't even let me pack properly. My mother grabbed an old backpack from the hallway, stuffed in a few clothes and my worn sneakers. My father opened the front door, gestured toward the dark street like a hotel doorman. "Out," he said. "If you're so grown up, let's see how far you get." I remember every face around that table. Some shocked, some entertained. No one stopped them. They threw me out like yesterday's garbage. Outside, the Tucson night felt colder than it should have in April. I stood there, holding that stupid backpack, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell me it was a joke. No one did. The door slammed behind me. I didn't even hear it lock. They knew I wouldn't dare come back. I walked down the driveway, numb, my heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. That night, it didn't end there. Around 10 p.m., while I was still wandering the streets trying to figure out what to do, I passed by Mrs. Jensen's house, our neighbor. Her front window was open. I heard her voice laughing. "She finally kicked Marwan out," Mrs. Jensen said to someone on the phone. "That girl's always been trouble. Selena says she won't last a week." The next day, everyone knew. Selena made sure of it. She called half the block that night, parading her victory. I heard things like, "Sometimes tough love is the only love," and "You can't let a child disrespect you in your own home." By Monday, kids at school whispered behind my back. Not that I stayed long enough to hear most of it. The humiliation wasn't just in being thrown out. It was in the knowledge that they wanted people to know. They didn't want me to come crawling back. They wanted to watch me fall. That night, sitting on the curb outside a 24-hour diner, staring at my scraped-up sneakers, I realized something. They weren't just done with me. They wanted me to fail. And I promised myself right there under the blinking neon sign and the cold Arizona night air, I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I would survive. I would win. I didn't sleep much that night. After hours of wandering the streets, unsure where I was headed, I finally texted the only person I trusted, Dahlia. She was a year older, lived across town, and had a couch she once joked was always open if I ever ran away. When she opened her door at midnight, I could see the panic in her eyes. She didn't ask questions right away. Instead, she handed me a blanket and said, "You can crash here tonight. We'll figure things out in the morning." That couch became my island in a sea of uncertainty. The next morning, the Arizona sun felt harsh and unforgiving through the blinds. I barely had the energy to get up, but I knew I had to. I told myself school would at least be something familiar, something normal. I gathered my backpack, the same one my parents had stuffed with my clothes like I was nothing, and headed back. The moment I stepped onto campus, it felt like something had shifted. Whispers floated in the hallways. People glanced, then looked away quickly, like I was contagious. I told myself it was just in my head, until I was called to the principal's office during third period. Principal Harris didn't even look me in the eye when I walked in. He cleared his throat awkwardly, motioned for me to sit. "Marwen," he began, flipping through a folder. "Your mother contacted us this morning." I sat up straighter, my stomach tightening. "What did she say?" He avoided my gaze. "She's requested that we remove your name from school records, effective immediately." It took me a second to process. "What do you mean, remove my name?" "She said you no longer live at home. You've been disowned. She provided paperwork. And—" He hesitated, glancing at me like he wanted to apologize but couldn't. "She also informed us you've been struggling mentally, that you're unstable, a danger to other students." I felt something inside me break, sharp and irreparable. My parents hadn't just kicked me out of their house, they were erasing me, making sure I couldn't belong anywhere. "Is that why everyone's been staring at me?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. By lunchtime, my school ID had been deactivated. I couldn't access the cafeteria. The bus driver told me my pass didn't work anymore. It was as if I had vanished overnight, like I'd never been there. Dahlia tried to act like nothing had changed, handing me her extra sandwich at lunch. But even she couldn't shield me from the looks, the parents who pulled their kids away when I walked past, the teachers who stopped calling on me in class. One afternoon, as I walked home alone, I overheard two mothers talking outside the grocery store. "Poor Selena," one of them said. "Kicking your own daughter out. That takes guts." The other woman nodded, folding her arms. "Well, you know how kids are these days. Unruly, disrespectful. She had to do what she had to do." They talked about me like I was some cautionary tale, like I wasn't even human. The worst part wasn't the gossip. It wasn't the stares or the loss of stability. It was the voice in my head whispering, "Maybe they're right. Maybe you really are broken." Days blurred together after that. No school, no home. I crashed at Dahlia's, but her parents weren't thrilled about me being there. The couch wasn't a long-term plan, and I knew it. I spent hours walking around town, applying for part-time jobs I wasn't old enough to legally hold, pretending like I had control over anything. One night, after yet another rejection, I sat alone at the bus stop, watching the headlights blur past. They hadn't just thrown me out. They'd dismantled every piece of my existence, and I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that I was exactly who they said I was, disposable. But as I stared out at the empty street, something inside me hardened. If they wanted me erased, I'd make damn sure I became someone they couldn't ignore. That was the day I realized I wasn't just homeless. I was invisible. People stopped seeing me the moment my parents erased me. But being forgotten wasn't the worst thing. They made sure I was remembered for all the wrong reasons. It started slowly. A neighbor's glance that lingered too long. Store clerks watching me like I was about to slip something into my pocket. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining things. But one afternoon, a week after I'd been kicked out, I walked past Mrs. Jensen's yard again. She was watering her flowers, pretending not to notice me until she spoke loud enough for me to hear. "Lock up your purses, ladies," she said to her friend. "The thief is back." I froze. Her friend didn't even glance my way. "Is that the one Selena said stole money from her?" "Yep," Mrs. Jensen replied, shaking her head like she pitied me. "And pills, too. Drugs. Poor Osric and Selena, raising a child like that." I wanted to scream. To tell them it was a lie. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The rumors spread like wildfire after that. Everywhere I went in the neighborhood, whispers followed me like shadows. I wasn't just the daughter who'd been thrown out. I was the thief, the junkie, the troubled kid who couldn't be trusted. Store owners stopped letting me in without following me down every aisle. Kids I'd known since elementary school crossed the street when they saw me coming. One night, while scrolling through Dahlia's old laptop at her place, I stumbled onto something that nearly broke me. My old classmates had started a Facebook group. It wasn't private. The name was clear. Marwan's Meltdown. They'd taken an old yearbook photo of me and slapped a red "wanted" sign over it. Underneath, there were edited photos, one with my face photoshopped behind prison bars, another where someone had crudely drawn a syringe in my hand. The captions were worse. "Guess she finally snapped. She always looked like a junkie. Wonder how long before she ends up in juvie." There were comments from people I used to sit next to in class, people who'd been at birthday parties at my house, people who knew better, or should have. I scrolled further and saw posts claiming I'd been arrested, that I'd stolen cash from my parents' safe, that I'd been caught dealing drugs behind the school. All of it was fake, but it didn't matter. The next day, when I stopped by a diner on 4th Street to ask if they were hiring, the manager barely looked at me before shaking his head. "Not looking to hire troublemakers," he muttered. Another place. Another door slammed. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. The rumors followed me everywhere. They weren't content with kicking me out of their house. They wanted to make sure I had nowhere left to go. I remember sitting outside that same diner later that night, the air dry and cool against my skin. I watched families laughing inside, their worlds intact, untouched. I thought about what my parents had told people, that I was dangerous, broken, worthless. Maybe if you hear something enough times, you start to believe it. That night, I almost did. Almost. But then I thought about the way they laughed when they threw me out. The way they'd made sure everyone knew they were the ones in control. That's when I realized their lies wouldn't kill me, but my silence might. That night, something inside me snapped, and I knew the next time they tried to break me, I'd be ready. I spent the next few weeks keeping my head down. No more trying to defend myself, no more fighting the rumors. I realized fighting fire with fire only fed their story. Instead, I started quietly saving every penny I could. Dahlia's parents tolerated me, but I knew I was on borrowed time. So I took whatever odd jobs people didn't want, cleaning garages, stacking boxes, even scrubbing floors at the local laundromat after closing. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me afloat. One evening, while wiping down tables at a small diner off Speedway Boulevard, a man walked in. Tall, middle-aged, wearing a leather jacket that smelled faintly of gasoline. His name was Merrick. I recognized him immediately. He used to stop by our house when I was little, sharing beers with my dad on Sunday afternoons, laughing too loud at things that weren't funny. He spotted me before I could duck away. "Well, if it isn't Marwan," he said, his voice all syrup and smiles. "Haven't seen you in a while. Heard your folks had troubles with you." It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like he knew the story, like he thought I was exactly what everyone said. I gave him a polite nod, finished cleaning, tried to ignore him, but he came back the next night, and the one after that. Each time, he'd drop a few extra dollars in the tip jar, strike up small talk. He never asked about the rumors, never mentioned my parents after that first night. Just offered little pieces of kindness, a ride home when it was late, a sandwich when I hadn't eaten all day. After a while, I let my guard down. He wasn't like the others. He didn't look at me like I was broken. One night, he showed up outside the diner with a manila envelope and a smile. "You don't belong here, kid," he said. "I know people. I can help you get on your feet. Rent a room, get steady work. But you're gonna need some money." I told him I was saving, but it wasn't much. Merrick shrugged, lighting a cigarette. "You trust me, right? Let me handle it. Give me what you've got, and I'll set it up. No strings attached." For a second, I hesitated. But no one else had ever offered me anything without expecting something in return. I handed him everything I had saved, every single dollar, nearly $1,200. It felt like my last shot. The next day, he disappeared. No phone call, no word, just gone. I tried calling the number he gave me. Disconnected. I asked around the neighborhood. No one had seen him. 3 days later, Dahlia showed me a message she'd found on her older brother's Facebook account. It was from Merrick, a private message to my parents. "She's still stupid enough to fall for it," he wrote. "Told you she needed one last lesson." My stomach dropped. It wasn't random. It wasn't just Merrick. They had sent him. Osric and Selena knew I was surviving, and they couldn't stand it, so they sent someone to tear me down one more time. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on Dahlia's back porch, staring up at the empty Arizona sky. And I made a decision. That was the last time anyone would ever use me. They wanted me broken. I was going to make sure I became unbreakable. For years, I ran from their poison. This time, I was ready to fight back. After Merrick's betrayal, I buried myself in survival. I worked, I studied. I kept my head down and made myself invisible. Not because I was weak, but because I was building something they couldn't touch. By 21, I had clawed my way into an apprenticeship at a small tech construction firm in Phoenix. I worked 16-hour days, took online classes at night, slept 4 hours if I was lucky. No one handed me anything. I fought for every inch. By 26, I had saved enough to move to San Francisco and launch my own company, a hybrid tech construction startup that specialized in sustainable housing. I named it MarTech, not after myself, but as a reminder of everything they said I couldn't be. The first few years were brutal. Investors turned me down. Clients didn't take me seriously. Men in boardrooms called me sweetheart, like I didn't belong there. But I kept going. By the time I was 30, local news outlets started noticing. Young woman CEO reinvents affordable housing. Tucson native breaks barriers in Silicon Valley. Every time they wrote my name, it felt like another brick added to the wall between me and my parents' voices in my head. For the first time in years, I started to breathe. Until the day I saw the Facebook post. A friend from back home had tagged me in a comment, asking, "Is this your mom?" I clicked the link. There she was, Selena. A carefully curated photo of her in front of a church fundraiser, hands folded like a saint. The caption underneath made my stomach churn. It breaks my heart that my only daughter abandoned her family for money and fame. Some kids forget where they came from. I pray for her soul every night. The comments were worse. "You did your best, Selena. Sometimes kids go bad." Ungrateful children always come crawling back when it's too late. I stared at the screen, pulse pounding. But it didn't stop there. The next week, one of my investors forwarded me an email from Selena Osric, subject, a warning about Marwan. The message was short, sharp, and filled with poison. "She may look successful, but you should know how she treats her family. She abandoned us. Be careful doing business with someone who has no loyalty." I read it twice, then 3 more times. There it was. The same strategy they'd used when I was 14. But this time, they weren't whispering in grocery stores. They were trying to burn down everything I'd built. That night, I picked up my phone and called her. She answered on the second ring, voice sweet like sugar-coated glass. Well, You finally remembered you have a mother. I didn't waste time. You listened to me carefully, Selena, I said, voice calm but sharp. If you ever try to sabotage my life again, I will drag every dirty thing you've ever done into the light. And believe me, I have receipts. She laughed, soft and fake. Oh, honey, you're still so dramatic. I'm not a kid anymore, I said coldly, and this is your last warning. Next time, I won't call. I'll expose you. There was a pause, just long enough for me to picture her smirk slipping. You've changed, she finally said. No, I replied. I grew up. I hung up without waiting for her to respond. I knew this wasn't over, but this time I wasn't running. Days after that call, I thought the storm had passed. Weeks went by without another message, no more slander floating around Silicon Valley's boardrooms, no backhanded emails from investors forwarding my mother's smear campaign. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived at my office. No sender's name. Just a neat, old-fashioned handwriting. For Marwan. Inside, a formal invitation. Family dinner, Tucson, Arizona. Location, Osric and Selena's residence. Purpose, reconciliation and healing. Date, Saturday, 7 p.m. I stared at it like it might catch fire in my hands. At first I laughed. They'd spent years trying to destroy me, and now they wanted peace. But a tiny part of me wanted to see what game they were playing. That Saturday, I flew back to Tucson. Not for them, but for myself. I needed to look them in the eyes and see what was left. The evening was uncomfortable from the start. Selena greeted me at the door like nothing had happened, her arms open, her smile thin and brittle. Oh, darling, she cooed. You look so successful. We're so proud. Osric shook my hand like I was a business associate, not the daughter he'd thrown away. The dining room was decorated like it always had been. Polished silverware, floral centerpiece, everything staged perfectly, like a picture in a magazine. But underneath the candlelight and hollow smiles, I could feel it. The tension so thick you could slice it with a butter knife. We ate in near silence. They asked about my business, my apartment, the people I worked with. No mention of the lies, no apology. Halfway through dessert, Selena cleared her throat delicately. Well, sweetheart, she said, folding her napkin too neatly, there's actually something we wanted to talk to you about. Osric nodded solemnly, like a man about to deliver bad news to a stranger. That's when she slid the folder across the table. Legal papers, a cosign request, a mountain of debt staring back at me in black and white. Credit cards, unpaid loans, a second mortgage. Just a little help, Selena said sweetly, like she hadn't spent a decade trying to ruin me. Family should stick together. I stared at her, stunned at how far she would go. This isn't a small favor, I said quietly. You want me to take responsibility for your choices. Osric leaned forward. We built you, Marwan. You wouldn't be who you are without us. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You're right, I wouldn't. Because every ounce of success I have is built on surviving you. Selena's smile froze. I thought you wanted to make peace, I continued. But this is just another game, another leash. She sighed dramatically. We thought you'd grown past your childish anger. I pushed the papers back across the table. Here's what I've grown past, letting you manipulate me. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. This is your last chance, I said evenly. If you try to drag me down again, I won't just walk away. Selena opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't wait. I walked out of that house, the same one they'd thrown me out of all those years ago. And this time, I left on my terms. That night, sitting in my rental car in front of their picture-perfect lawn, I realized something chilling. They'd never stop, not until I stopped them myself. That night, I realized they'd never stop until I stopped them myself. The next morning, I boarded a flight back to San Francisco, leaving Tucson and that suffocating dinner table behind. I thought maybe the silence would last a little longer, that the message I left on their polished dining room floor would be enough. I was wrong. It started small. A text from my cousin Amanda, the one I hadn't spoken to since I was 16. "Hey! Aunt Selena said you're turning your back on family. Is that true?" Then another. "You know they're struggling, right? They gave you everything." By noon, my inbox was filled with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. "Your parents sacrificed so much. You're too proud, Marwan. Don't forget where you came from. It's just money. Family is everything." They framed it like concern, but I knew better. It was a coordinated attack. Osric and Selena had mobilized the entire family, weaponized their guilt, their nostalgia, their loyalty. By the end of the week, even distant relatives I barely remembered were calling, leaving voicemails dripping with pressure. "Marwan," Uncle Robert's voice drawled, "you can't let pride tear this family apart." And then came the worst one. A message from my grandmother. "Baby girl, they're your parents. You only get one family." Each word cut deeper than the last. I could almost hear Selena coaching them behind the scenes, painting herself the martyr and me the villain. But it didn't stop there. One Monday morning, I walked into my office and saw Marla, my assistant, hovering nervously outside my door. "There's something you need to see," she said. She handed me her tablet. A headline screamed back at me from the local Tucson news website. "Tech CEO abandons bankrupt parents. Family claims she forgot her roots." Underneath, a photo of me, pulled from my company website, next to a years-old picture of Selena and Osric standing outside their house, looking frail and pitiful. The article quoted a family source, my Aunt Rowena. She told them I had left my poor parents to drown in debt while I basked in Silicon Valley riches. I sat back in my chair, pulse pounding in my ears. They hadn't just brought the family into this. They'd dragged the world into it too. By noon, reporters were calling my office. By 3 p.m., clients were asking questions. And by 5 p.m., I knew exactly what I had to do. That evening, I stood behind a podium in front of a wall of cameras. I'd spent the afternoon drafting a statement with my legal team, but when the lights hit my face, I pushed the paper aside. I spoke from my chest. "My name is Marwan Osric," I began. "I was disowned by my family at 14. I built everything I have today without their help, and despite their efforts to tear me down." I paused, letting the weight of it settle. "I will not apologize for surviving. I will not apologize for protecting myself." I glanced straight into the cameras. I love the idea of family, but family does not mean manipulation, exploitation, or abuse, and I will not allow anyone, blood or not, to weaponize my past against me. I stepped away from the mic to the sound of flashing cameras. That night, as I sat in my apartment overlooking the bay, I knew something fundamental had shifted. They'd wanted a war. Now they had one. What came next wasn't just war. It was survival. The morning after my press conference, I woke up to a flood of emails. Some were supportive. Strangers, colleagues, even old classmates who'd quietly watched my rise. Others were ugly, laced with judgment and shame. But in the middle of all that noise, one message stood out. It was from Selena. No subject line, no greeting. "We're losing the house. Your father is sick. We need you." Short, sharp, meant to cut. I deleted it without replying, but she didn't stop. The next day, a voicemail. "Marwan, it's your mother. I know you're angry, but your father, he's not well. We're behind on the mortgage. The bank's coming after us. Please, don't let us end up on the street." For a moment, I felt it. That old guilt, the one they'd been feeding me since I was a child. But it wasn't the same anymore. I knew better. 3 days later, another message arrived. This time, an email with an attachment. Medical records. Subject line, "Your mother's condition." I opened it reluctantly. Stage 4 cancer diagnosis. The words blurred in front of my eyes. And then, something told me to check. I forwarded the document to one of my attorneys, who had contacts in Arizona's health system. It didn't take long. The records were fake. The name of the physician didn't match the hospital. The dates of diagnosis conflicted. It was a fabrication, a final, desperate manipulation. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights of San Francisco glowing beyond my window. I stared at the email, at the cold, calculated lie. They hadn't just wanted my money. They wanted to own me again. The next morning, I booked a flight to Tucson. When I arrived, I didn't go to their house. I asked them to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, neutral ground. They walked in together, older, smaller than I remembered, but still wearing the same masks. Selena smiled, brittle as glass. Osric stayed quiet, his eyes hollow. "You got my message," she said softly. I nodded, sliding a folder across the table. It contained the mortgage balance, the overdue notices, every financial document they'd quietly sent me over the past few months. "I'll pay this," I said calmly. "One time." Selena's face lit up like Christmas morning. "But—" I raised a hand, cutting her off. "This is the last thing I will ever do for you." Her smile faltered. "I'm not doing this because I owe you," I continued. "I'm doing it because I want to close this chapter." Osric shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "There's something else," Selena said quickly, voice soft and syrupy. "I've been sick." I shook my head. "Don't," I said. I checked. The reports were fake. Her mouth opened, then shut again. The lie exposed, hanging heavy between us. "I'll clear the mortgage," I said. "But after that, we're done." Osric leaned forward. "We're family!" I met his gaze without blinking. "No," I said quietly. "We're strangers who used to share a roof." I stood, leaving the check on the table. Selena called after me as I walked away. "Marwan, you're making a mistake. You'll regret this." I didn't look back. That night, flying home, I stared out the plane window at the darkness stretching below. For the first time in my life, I felt something close to peace. They couldn't hurt me anymore. I thought it was over. I was wrong. A week after I wired the final payment to clear their debts, the internet reminded me just how far they'd go. It started with a message from a former colleague. "Hey Marwan, saw your parents' post. Nice to see you finally reconciled." I blinked at the screen. I hadn't. Curious, and with a sick feeling in my gut, I clicked the link. There it was. A post from Selena's Facebook account, accompanied by photos of me as a child. Birthday parties, first day of school photos, me grinning awkwardly at 14, the night before they threw me out. "Family is everything," the caption read. "We're so proud of our daughter and all she's accomplished. No matter what, a parent's love never fades." Thousands of likes, comments from neighbors, old family friends. "You raised her well." "She's a testament to good parenting." "Glad you all patched things up." I scrolled faster, my heart sinking. Instagram, Twitter, even local media outlets picked up the story, painting Osric and Selena as proud, supportive parents behind a wildly successful daughter. They posted photos I hadn't seen in years. They painted a picture of a perfect, loving family, a family that never existed. It wasn't just vanity, it was theft. They were hijacking my story, turning my survival into their achievement. By noon, reporters were emailing my office for quotes about our beautiful family reunion. By afternoon, I'd had enough. I called my legal team. They moved fast. We filed cease and desist letters, copyright claims over the photos, public statements correcting the narrative. We didn't scream or argue. We documented. We dismantled their fantasy. And then, I let it go. I could have done more. Could have dragged them publicly through the mud, listed every betrayal, every cruel thing they'd done. But I didn't. Because I was tired. Tired of fighting ghosts. Weeks passed. The media storm died down. People moved on to the next scandal, the next feel-good story. One night, sitting in my apartment overlooking the bay, I scrolled past an old family photo someone had reposted. There we were. Me, 10 years old, between Osric and Selena, smiling like I belonged. I closed my phone and leaned back. For so long, I'd believed that survival meant winning. That if I worked harder, became bigger, richer, louder, I could drown out the pain. But the truth was quieter. I hadn't needed to win. I'd needed to be free. And I was. My scars would never disappear. Some nights, the echoes of their laughter still rang in my head. Some wounds don't heal, but they don't have to define you. I became everything they said I couldn't, and I did it without them. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with this. If there's one thing I've learned from everything I lived through, it's this. Family isn't about blood. It's about how people make you feel when you're at your worst. It's about who shows up when you have nothing to give. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who break you. But hear me when I say, you are not what they did to you. You are not the scars they left behind. You are the person who stood up and kept going anyway. In this country, we're taught to believe in second chances. But you also have the right to protect your peace, your future, your freedom, even if that means walking away from the people who gave you life. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you thought you couldn't live without? What was the moment you finally realized? Enough is enough. Drop your story in the comments. If this video touched you or made you feel seen, type number 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like this story, I want to know why. What part didn't sit right with you? Your voice matters here. And hey, if you want to hear more true stories like this one, stories that will make you think, make you feel, maybe even help you heal, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This isn't just a channel. It's a place where we talk about the things nobody wants to talk about, but everyone needs to hear. Because at the end of the day, your past doesn't get to decide who you become. You do.